All right. Hi, Reverend Williams. Thank you for
My,
doing this with us.
my full name is James Samuel Williams Jr. Senior class president, 1952.
Is there anything else you want to use to introduce yourself? Tell us about you.
I'm one of the early student strikers in 1951, led by Barbara John. I participated after school, on the block, in the street, talking to students day and night regarding not to return to school until our demands are met. So that was the beginning, really, of civil rights, civil and human rights for all of us. We had never seen anything like this, to strike for a new school, until we came along, until this happened. And you know, in the 1960s, this is 1951 that I'm talking about, April 23rd. But in the 60s, it was a commonplace thing. It went from school to school, location to location, that is, demonstrating and marching. And I participated in two phases of it here in Prince Edward as a school student, and then in 1963, demonstration downtown, where some of us went to jail for demonstrating to worship God.
Now, with this recording, we're thinking about Griffin Day. You know, Reverend L. Francis Griffin. His birthday was on Friday, on September 15th. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions about him.
All right.
What was your first memory of Reverend Griffin?
My first memory of Reverend Griffin, good question, was when I was a boy in Sunday school. He came to church, he came to Sunday school that morning, dressed in ODs, what we call OD, Army outfit. Had his stripes on and medals and whatnot. So I asked a fellow, Willie Lewis Hembrick. I said, who is that guy? He sees on the 4th Street side. I said, who is he? Willie Lewis told me that's Reverend Griffin's son. And that's the first time I have any kind of recollection about him, because he knew me. But I did not know him before I didn't know him until he came out of service. He knew me before he went in service. The reason I didn't know him then, before he went in, he lived on the other side of town. If you're on 3rd Street and walking past DMV, his house is right down, the house in which they lived, a couple of doors down from there. So if he had lived over here on this side of there, I would have had a different recollection of him, I'm sure. But that's the first time I recall having seen him.
How would you describe him as a person? What was his personality like?
Griffin was a very outgoing person. He was a person who was very critical, analytical mind on him. President of Shaw University, where Griffin attended, said in a speech once to Dr. Daniel that when Griffin was on campus, he had the laziest mind on campus and the smartest mind. The laziest mind and the smartest mind. But he was very brilliant fellow, and steeped in civil and human rights for people. He had some ways about him that did not correspond to the way of others. I've talked to people who was in high school with them years ago. They said They said he was different, and he was. For instance, I'll give you two examples. In 1962, I purchased a new Pontiac car. He purchased a new 72 wagon, station wagon, white top and green bottom. But he had a black wagon before that. So I told him, that's a great day. You really love your station wagon. His response was, that's what you're supposed to have if you pastor the church. You see, most pastors are said thinking differently. This is what he did, thought differently. No preachers I wouldn't think of a station wagon if you're pastor, but he was thinking in terms of loading not only children but materials and supplies. And another thing that set him all different, you know, he used to give guys downtown, right where the church is located now, but right where Midtown Square is located. That's a big vacant lot, parking lot. Alcoholics used to come up to him, Reverend, I want you to lend me $2 so I can go over here to the liquor store to get me a pint or filth or whatever it was. And he would do it. And there were times I see in church with him during the week, he would give alcoholics his last money out of his pocket. Why did you do that? Give him the last, I inquired. He said, because they have a need to be met, and it needs to be met immediately, right then and there. Another thing, third thing may have set him off different. He did not relish or go in for the type of church that we have today, following the regular humdrum of activities, Sunday morning worship, revival, so on and so on. As it is, he saw the church as what it should be a mass movement, a movement to correct the evils of society. A lot of people don't see it that way, or many people, because people will say, well, that's political, or that's socialism, or whatnot. But Griffin plunged right on through that, and he had different things, different ideas about different things. They set him off from different people. And that goes example I just gave you. I was talking about alcoholics. I would be in the study talking, just the two of us. Sometimes he could tell when I came in, because I always stop at the fountain and fill up with water on the way to his office. Sam Williams, he knew my walk too. But there were times when the two of us were in his office, he could tell by a person's walk. He said, somebody wants some money. And it was. We want somebody to come in begging for money to get liquor at the liquor store, and I'll give you the reasons as to why. But he was different in that regard.
Yeah. Could you tell me how he helped or how he was part of the strike in 51?
What about the strike in 51?
What was his part in it, in the 51 strike?
Oh, Lord, he was our shepherd, our leader. See, Griffin came out of the pulpit in that sense, and going back to something I said earlier, where he doesn't like the traditional congregational church like we do now, regular Sunday morning. So he came out of the pulpit, that's like coming out of the pulpit, and identifying himself with the common man, with student strikers, with righteous doing. See, and he was our strike leader, pointing the way. We met at his church, at First Baptist. I succeeded him there. He died on September 18th, 1980, and I went in 82, Easter Sunday of 82. So, but he was very daring, very brave. And I tell you, that leads me to give you an example when he was in court back then in the 1950s, there were two people who really helped him. One was a man whose street is named after him, Andrews Drive. He was a black man, Brewer Andrews, but it was on Uncle Tom. Griffin said he helped him, and also Sheriff Clark. So I asked him, how can Sheriff Clark help you with his racist self? He said, when he got to the witness stand to speak, he told the judge in the court, the only thing he could say about him, he's a man. And Griffin was a man, solid all the way through, wasn't nothing messy about him in that regard, straight, and of different opinions that pointed to going somewhere.
Yeah.
As our leader. See, as our leader in civil rights, he gave us a new Jesus, a revolutionary character, which he was. Jesus was radical and revolutionary in the sense that he brought about a change in the world. Revolutionary change, made a difference. And that type of Jesus, like I said, he was a liberal thinker, a liberal theologian, went to a liberal school, Shaw University. So did his oldest brother, Clifton, who pastored First Cavalry in Norfolk. So did his father, CHD, Charles Henry Denson, who pastored First Baptist before he came. So all three of them went to Shaw, attended Shaw, which brought that, caused me to attend Shaw too. But when you were in Griffin's presence, you knew you were in somebody's presence that was different. Talked differently, and very daring, very brave. There was a man here in Farmville, Jesse Bowling. He's from Richmond. He was a creative genius. Griffin adopted him as his friend. He wouldn't work, but he adopted him as his friend. And Jesse Bowling made an airplane. And Griffin and Bowling were flying all around into hell with it. And the plane went down over in what is called Young's Flat. Young's Flat, if you're going past DMV, it's a big lot on the end. You're going past Bridge, same thing, a big lot on the end. That was Young's Flat. And every year they have a fire cannon fair. But every other year or so, there was a black fair that was held right there on Young's Flat. I mentioned this, a lot of people don't know, I mentioned this 3 years ago. They asked me to speak down there. Silas Green from New Orleans, that's the black guy whose fair we attended. Now, it didn't have as much as Fire Cannon Fair. The big Ferris wheel up in this region to the sky. Had happy horses, merry-go-round, games, women. Green may have had a Ferris wheel. I don't think he did. Because when I was a boy, we used to stay behind and help clean up. Yeah, help clean up one time. I had to tell you, help clean up one time, then it rained. I got all wet. They didn't pay us, but he didn't pay us. It was about 50 cents.
Oh, my mother.
And I got home, my mother got after me. You barely have enough to get your pants in the clean. Pants were 35 cents, paid us 50 cents. But anyway, I didn't know I was going into, didn't want me to go into a tangent. But when you're talking about Griffin, you're talking about somebody very receptive to people, very critical, theologian, philosopher, all of that.
How did his theology, does what he did factor into 1963? So much happened that year here.
63.
Yeah, just tell me about him in that year.
I have to bring that into being as the publication showed. The first publication that Joe had, I had been at Shaw University demonstrating with students. Two of us led the demonstration uptown. And then things jumped off at Greensboro, A&T, and other colleges. I came home as a doctor. It was written up in that book. Everything that's wrong is all dead and racist. We need to do something here. And so he said, well, go for it. And we organized Goodwin Douglas. He's pastor of Beulah AME Church downtown. Another fellow, Hale, he was pastor of St. James and Prospect. It's closed now, I think. But the three of us put together demonstrators. And Griffin gave us the impetus of what we need to do to strike. We used to make signs in the basement of First Baptist. That was our meeting place. Organize, get our meeting. See, when you're demonstrating, you meet there, pray, sing freedom song. And I know one time we singing, ain't gonna let nobody turn it around. We shall overcome. Something there, something. Griffin told me, stop all that singing in there and get them children out here to demonstrate. See, he wasn't in for a lot of singing and all that. I'll tell you this, there were hymns that he favored. Use me, Lord, use me in thy service. I'll obey, I'll all. He loved it. Didn't have to say it, but I could tell it. But one hymn that he didn't like, I shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. Griffin didn't like that.
Why?
Because it's still in my complacency. I'm satisfied. See, in the back of your mind, especially a raised fighter, you know, I shall not be moved, just like a tree. And there are a lot of hymns, too, that have tricked us, like a lot of people singing, oh, precious is that flow that makes me white as snow. Oh, precious, none but the blood of Jesus. See, some of these hymns are tricky. Ferris, Lord Jesus, we used to say Ferris, Lord Jesus in elementary school. But that Ferris, I've learned, doesn't apply to whether Jesus was fair or bad, but good or bad, but fair in complexion. See, and that's why I said a lot of hymns are tricky, but that's the way he was, you know, struggling and toiling and fighting. He used to do a lot of fist fighting.
Wait a minute.
No, when he was in high school, when he was coming along in high school, my aunt told me he used to fight girls as well as the boys.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was tough. Fist fighter. I know she came down here. I was living up there with her then. She came home one summer and saw him in the pulpit. She had to cry, right, because she couldn't believe that was Lester Griffin, who used to do so much fist fighting and all that stuff. But anyway, brave, courageous.
Yeah, definitely a man of action.
Huh?
A man of action.
Oh,
I've
Lord,
heard that
no question.
throughout this entire conversation.
Yeah, he was a man of action. That's what he believed in, mobilization.
Yeah.
Moving, going forward, and you know, being mobilized and with groups and so forth. Now we took a bus to the March on Washington.
I was getting ready to ask you how he helped. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one hot summer.
Did he go?
Huh?
Did he go to the march?
No, I don't think he went.
Okay.
He didn't go with us, but I went, and several of us went. Demonstrators went to the march. That summer was hot, geographically, atmospherically, like the summer we had there, burning up and hot, social-wise, religious-wise, social, civil rights-wise, human rights-wise.
Yeah.
That's March on Washington. We wanted to go So we talked with him, conferred with him about we want to take a bus. And we had a bus to leave down in the parking lot by First Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
Looked like it was 12 o'clock at night when we left here. But they said, and I always believe there were more, 250,000 people merged on the Capitol.
Yeah.
Well, that was the population of the transportation, as I call it, 2,000 buses from all around. 134 chartered trains.
Mm-hmm.
10 different airlines. Now, all of that excludes people coming by car,
Right.
driving down from different nearby cities and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really think it may have been a little too much for me, but to be in touch with too much with him.
Yeah.
He didn't have an excellent heart at that time.
Right.
You know, popping pills and things. But,
What do you remember about the march? What do you remember about being at the march?
I remember pushing my way, first of all, pushing my way to the speaker's stand just as close as possible. And I was just as close to all those folk on the rostrum as I am right now to the stage.
Okay.
Yeah, I pushed my way all the way up to there. And I recall the powerful singing of Mahalia Jackson, the introduction by A. Philip Randolph.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him.
Huh?
I was going to ask you about Randolph, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, A. Philip Randolph was president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Pullman train, red caps and whatnot, working the train, getting on the train in New York and getting off in Miami, and all that stuff, overworking you. I had a friend who was a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
He was working, he was riding train from New York, working the train from New York all the way to Chicago, the Broadway Limited. He said when he came, like they'd been on the road from Chicago, there was a white man a lot of times at the top of the step with a book in his hand. And he would reassign them, and then to get on the train and go all the way back to Chicago. See, Randolph broke up a lot of that mess.
Yeah.
Through labor unions. He formed the first black union in the country.
Yeah.
A. Philip Randolph, first black union. And I recall so vividly his words. He said, I thought he'd have a long oration or oratory speech. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the moral leader of our nation, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And said, see, yeah, he
So
said
he
that.
passed, okay.
Huh?
It's like he passed the torch a little bit on
Yeah.
that one. Yeah.
He said, and then King got up, and Lord, the rest is historical information, the way he carried on. In that speech, Roy Wilkins spoke, President of NAACP, John Lewis spoke. Matter of fact, I just purchased 10 new stamps. John Lewis is on the latest one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I purchased those 2-3 days in Richmond. One sheet. I can't find them yet. I don't know what I do with it. But anyway, that's the way the march was. We went out, all of the demonstrators in Farmville who could, went up, and every day when they demonstrated, they used to eat an hour long, come from downtown. My wife and some other women would prepare hot dogs, hamburgers, and different things, you know, lights up. And then we go back downtown. That, I'm telling you, that was among the most fulfilling, integrated summer through which I've ever lived, because there were white students in the movement
Yeah.
came to help us. But a lot of book reading was going on. Billboards and Souls of Black Folk,
Yeah.
Gunnar Murdoch, the big thick book he wrote. People passing books, one from Baldwin, excuse me, James Baldwin,
Yeah.
Fire Next Time.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't, in Giovanni's room. All of Baldwin's work, it was customary to see students demonstrate, walk in the street, reading paperback books, walk all down by the ball house, walking town. Yeah, when they got off. When you gonna get through that book? When you so. And that's what we were reading then at the Methodist Church.
Mm-hmm.
There were Goodwin Douglas was pastor. He was living in the parsonage, but he had two white demonstrators, two white female demonstrators living in the parsonage with him. They weren't shacking up or nothing like
Right.
that, but they didn't need a place to stay. But things were getting to blend in, and you didn't see noticeable racism,
Right.
white racism or black racism among the people. But people were more together,
Mm-hmm.
black and white, that summer.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a lot to be reckoned with.
Right.
And Griffin led us all, as he did here when we struck with Barbara Johns,
Right.
the movement she fostered, that she and Griffin presented. And people didn't like him. In his own church, they didn't like that.
Mm.
See, they didn't like that at First Baptist. He fought down there more than it was anybody in the street.
Mm.
Oh Lord, yeah, they didn't like that. They wanted to maintain the image of a middle class church, or the image we don't do anything to upset white folk.
Mm.
Yeah. This is where First Baptist is. All First Baptist churches in the country are middle class. They get the idea, we were here first. All of them got this, we were first. So, but he was fought in Uncle Tom and we were all in the church and all that stuff like that. They were wearing him out, but he stayed there from 1949 until January 18th of 1980.
Wow. That's a lifetime.
Huh?
That's a lifetime.
Yeah, nothing but a lifetime to stay there.
Mm.
And I'll tell you this, I haven't said this publicly before, but one Friday, he and I went to Richmond.
Mm.
He wanted to go somewhere to eat. So I told him something about McDonald's and Burger King. I'm talking about a place where we could go, a restaurant.
Right.
Got a credit card, I want to test it out. So the place was at that time Valley's Restaurant up on Broad and Staples Mill
Mm-hmm.
Road, way up there.
Mm-hmm.
You familiar with that?
I am, yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, that's where Valley's was. So we're coming back, talking that Friday. And he said something that I had never heard him say before. He said, you were talking, he dropped his head and said, "Dog, I got the wrong church." He said that, I imagine so many times how painful it'll be. You be in the church over 30 years and come to find out that you're out of place, the wrong church. It was in a sense for him, because some didn't even want us to demonstrate there now.
Right.
But he did that. He opened that door. That was one Friday. The next Friday he died.
Yeah.
That was his last trip to Richmond when I went with him. And that's what he said. I used to go practically every day to see him,
Mm-hmm.
but I went in I didn't see him Thursday. I called him, talking some foolishness. but I can't, I may tell you later. But anyway, I talked with him on the phone. I was working at Legal Aid.
Okay.
Called him right around the corner. And he was at First Baptist that day with one of the deacons where he used to be every day. And the next day, early in the morning, 5 or 6 o'clock, he died. Brought a real heavy shock to us all.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't like died, like been in the hospital.
Right.
10 or 12, wasn't nothing, wasn't nothing like that, just went on and died.
What do you remember most about him? What do you remember most about him?
His critical mind, radical thinking, revolutionary, bringing about change.
Yeah.
Society needs to be changed from what it is. I think of Griffin every day.
I believe it.
I do. I told his daughter, Cookie, she came down. Yeah. I told her, you met Naj and
I haven't met him yet, but I've talked to him over the phone and then over the computer as well. I haven't met him in person yet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought you had. Been down there so much. But I told her, I thought of your daddy every day. She said, I do too. And I do. I've never had a man in the world to impress my thinking as the way Griffin has.
Yeah.
And to be critically conscious of things. And, analyzing. That's the mind he had. One day, well, that was the guy who taught me, James Edward Cheek. He said to quit in the mid-semester of 63 to go there into Chicago. His alma mater, our alma mater, to be president. Stayed there 5 years and went to be president of Howard.
Okay.
For 19 years, you talking about a teacher out of sight. He was. Cheek was brilliant. A's in seminary and school and all of that. So, what was it? I was talking so much. I didn't know I was going to say that. It'll come back to me. But he and the two of them befriended themselves, and that's the thing. He was a theologian, scholar, well-read. Griffin told me sometimes he'd knock out 2, 3 paperbacks in one night.
Nice.
Read 2, 3 paperbacks in one night. But he and I used to go to Richmond, to the Presbyterian bookstore, just to eat. It was downtown on Grade.
Okay.
Just to eat and purchase books.
Yes.
And he had a saying about how expensive hardback books are when they come out on the market. He said, they come in paperback, but you can't wait. That's the truth, you can't wait.
I feel the same way. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He said, but you can't wait. And one time we going through some books at the Presbyterian bookstore, and he said that, he told me, you're going to be like that. And I always have been. A lover of books, I am. And he turned me on to that, when he said that.
Do you know what his favorite book was?
Huh?
Do you know what his favorite book was, or a couple of them? You know how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. You may get a sip. His favorite theologian was Reinhold Niebuhr. R-E-I-N-H-O-L-D-H-O-L-D N-I-E-B-U-H-R. He had a brother named Richard Niebuhr. Reinhold Niebuhr was his favorite.
Okay.
He wrote moral man and immoral society.
Mm.
Yeah, it's deep. He wrote that. Several of them. I didn't think that I was going to think about them. But moral man and immoral society.
It's good to have just the one. Yeah.
Huh?
You're all right with just the one. Because I always, whenever I know someone's a reader,
Yeah.
I want to know what their favorite is or kind of close to it. Because I end up having, you can't really pick one favorite.
Uh-huh.
So I get it.
Yeah, Reinhold Niebuhr was his favorite theologian. He, and then there was one up there at the school in Boston, Nels F.S. Ferre,
Mm.
F-E-R-R-E, French with an accent
Oh.
over the E. He was one of his favorites. But then Niebuhr, Reinhold Niebuhr, see, you go online, look on anything on him,
Yeah.
see, you'll find out why, because he's out in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And he organized, he's a pastor in the church, organized people against wrongdoing in Detroit. Then they called him to teach at Union Theological Seminary in New York,
Oh, okay.
one of the top in the world. And Niebuhr taught there. That's up there on Broadway off of 125th Street in the vicinity of the Riverside Church. The Riverside Church, the National Council of Churches, at Columbia University.
Okay.
All of that right up.
Like
Columbia,
one
over there.
area?
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
never been there.
Not yet. Haven't
Yeah.
been there yet.
Well, that's a cultural area, highly cultural area. But when Niebuhr went there, The Nature and Destiny of Man,
Mm.
Volume 2, Moral Man and Moral Society, Nature and Destiny of Man. But Niebuhr, she was rough to get by, rough to understand. But he did a lot to bring meaningful revolutionary change in the country.
Mm.
So he was revolutionary and way over there in his thinking. Niebuhr was. Griffin met him in New York. Met him at Union, I think. Griffin said he asked him, the work I'm doing in Virginia, how would you classify it, or how do you say I'm doing it? He told me it's right on target.
Mm-hmm.
Go, leading demonstrations and speaking out for social justice, human equality.
Mm-hmm.
But Niebuhr he could read, Niebuhr was a man,
Okay.
he could read,
Okay.
I told you, Pierre de Chardin, who, he was theologian and a scientist.
Oh.
Yeah, de Chardin, and French.
Mm-hmm.
And he was into a lot of thinkers. Now, there were some of our thinkers that influenced him. Vernon Johns,
Right.
Barbara's uncle.
Mm-hmm.
I used to chauffeur for him.
How was that?
When?
How was that to be a chauffeur?
Not well. Vernon John, well, I said that in the auditorium one time, all due respect to the family. Vernon Johns, I had to put him down because Vernon Johns was just like death. You didn't know when he would appear.
Well, that's a way to put it.
Come on, Shine. He coming in now and want me to drive to Montgomery. Well, yeah. He wanted me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I backed out. It was a legitimate excuse. I was having a house bill.
Well,
At that time, this was 62. And I told him he got mad. He didn't like it. But I was glad I cut him loose. Because but the Johns, of course, the Johns and his father were great influences to him.
Right.
John started black children riding school buses in Prince Edward.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things he did, civil rights that he preceded
Right.
King at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church before King went there. He's the immediate King's immediate predecessor. He was, but John was. He quit Dexter 5 times, resigned 5 times.
Okay.
Yeah, but Griffin had a little more polish than John. There's, you know, it was nothing to see. He loved that farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was a farmer, preacher, analytical thing. All these people I talking, brilliant thinker. When I was driving to Philadelphia one time, we were on Virginia State College campus. He stayed overnight, and I stayed. His wife was there. I thought we were going to stay overnight and get up like 7 or 8 o'clock and have breakfast and go hit the road. He woke me up around 2 o'clock in the morning. Come on, Sam. Let's hit the highway, something like that. Lord, I knew then I was going to put him down. Because every time he appeared, but John was something else. While we were going there, we were on crossing Hull Street on Route 1, the highway. I can't think of it right now. The highway, the street. Are you from Richmond?
Basically grew up there.
You did?
Grew up there, yeah. So.
What's the name of the street that crosses Hull over there near?
Look, now I'm drawing a blank.
You know what I call it. I think about it, you know, time I get ready to leave. But anyway, he told me, Sam, you're dealing with the man now whose mind is always working. He told me, and it was too.
Yeah.
It was always working. Total recall, photographic memory. He memorized the book of Romans. He did. Created the memory of the book of Romans. You know, he had to have a mind, so he had a mind on it. But John's influenced Griffin a lot. And he'd do things. When we went to Philly, we went by to see his daughter. That lady, she died a couple of years ago. We always came here to school together. So she told me, she's married to a dentist then. She told me that once they had a good, nice wall-to-wall carpet and all of that, that her father went out and purchased some fish. And they're cutting them up and preparing them for sale. He believed in selling things.
Right.
On that good carpet right there in Philadelphia. And there was nothing to him to see back there then. It was nothing for him to come down Griffin Boulevard, Eli Street there. You know, on his way to the livestock market with a calf in the back of his car. We used to laugh. He did things like that. Plowing the field and reading a book at the same time.
That's just practical.
Yeah. Griffin said he went out there one day and they had a cow in the living room.
I have questions. just because.
He influenced him a lot.
I believe it. All right, here's our last question. What do you want people to remember about Reverend Griffin?
What said it? I know something.
No, you're good. What do you want people to remember the most about Reverend Griffin?
What young people remember the most?
Or just, what do you want people to know about him?
Oh, basically the same thing that I've shared with you. That he was for us.
Yeah.
In favor of us, what we would do, as he said, the cause.
Yeah.
He was in favor of the cause. What are they doing for the cause? You know, or the movement. You know, those are, and they would remember the good to get along with, but anti-racist, this racist stuff didn't jive with him. And the major thing that they remember, he was, let's say, a good preacher
Mm-hmm.
and a civil rights leader.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only weakness in the actual field that he had was when it came to money. I was lecturing over here on Longwood's campus, about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Edna Allen, you heard her, Edna
Yeah.
Allen Dean? Did you meet her?
Didn't meet her.
Well, she died a couple of years ago in
Mhm.
Richmond. And I was like, she's in the class when I was lecturing. She said, she broke right in. He didn't like money. That was Edna said. And he did, and he had that thing. See, Griffin was what you don't hear of, a Christian socialist. Griffin was a socialist. He had some allegiances with the Communist Party before he went in the military way back there in New York, in Manhattan. Eugene Debs and these people.
Mm-hmm. I know Debs.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've heard of him.
Griffin had some connection with them. And that money thing was, he wasn't, Johns had a business mind.
Yeah.
See, and revolutionary head too, but Griffin didn't have that business. He said something I looked at. A Christian church is not supposed to have money. That's what I've heard him say. Well, if you look at it, he's right, because the Apostle Paul, who established all of those Christian churches, did not go around. He, Barnabas, Timothy, the women, Dorcas, and all the rest of them did not go around trying to rev up the church's treasury. He kept away from that money.
Mm-hmm.
Paul said, you repeated Jesus in the book of Acts, the more blessed to give than to receive. He repeated, Jesus said that he repeated. And the second thing Paul said about money, the love of money is the root of all evil. That's what he said. And that's all. He didn't deal with this money thing, no treasurer, going around raising money for this, that, and other. And you think about it. You think about how far advanced humanity would be if we did not let capitalism and money, and this is another thing I'm going to now, it won't be long, capitalism and money intervene in helping people.
Yeah.
See, churches are heavily invested in war-making enterprises. Heavy, they don't do like we said. American Baptist, United Methodist, Presbyterian, none of these white churches one church would be in the millions of dollars. Oh, yeah. They invested and tied in. And this may be, I worked with a church like that, it was a funding source like that in Buffalo. See, the churches here in Farmers, they got $1 million collections. These churches downtown and other places. And like the Southern Baptist Convention, predominantly white, but the richest convention in the country or in the world. All the Texas oil people, Southern. So he was right about that money thing. Not supposed to have money, and that was a little his weakness. When it came to giving money, he just gave arbitrarily, didn't write check, and that fill out an envelope. Sometimes he just give $10 in Sunday school, $5, whatever. And he said, they know it when if I don't give it. But he did that. He just dropped money, $20 or whatnot. He was not systematized like that. Mm-hmm. See, I got a lot down here on Griffin. A couple of those on the pastors. My mother left it to me. The First Baptist wanted it. She had been dead 30 days. They wanted it. I didn't know what to do with it. If I sent it to the church, I'd be wrong. If I keep it, I'd be wrong. So E.B. Allen funeral home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, E.B. Allen wrote me a letter at Shaw and told me, what your mother left for you, you keep that. See, they buried my mother.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so she left. That's the only thing. Well, that's one thing that got me out of it. And my uncle in Chase City, he married my mother's sister.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, I talked with him about it, because I was really torn inside. Didn't want to do nothing for want to do something for my home church, but didn't want to deny him. And he said, black folk can't afford to sell anything. That's what he told me. You know. So those were the two things. But in that interim, in that period, one Saturday, a man called me, Mrs. Purvall's father. He was a great contractor.
Mm-hmm.
They own the house right here on Hill Street in Barrow.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? This brick house right
I
here.
think I've driven by.
You go out, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, brick house, look at it going the other way. That's where the Reds live. They did live on Chambers Street, but Longwood took their property. But he called me one day on Saturday at Shaw, talked a long time, wanted trying to persuade me to sell this lot. But I said all of that, Lil, all of it, to say he was chairman of the trustee board. That family had money.
Mm-hmm.
Take some business with your theology. I know you're talking about Griffin. When you really shout, take some business. You don't just, he was talking, I know he was talking, Griffin didn't have not one iota in him about business, and he went along with it, he had to have it.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff, when it came to that money and business and budgeting and all that stuff, fiscal stuff. Now some pastors, I want to tell you, but some pastors are going home in that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He had a brother, Clifton.
Mm-hmm.
He pastored First Calvary in Norfolk. He was older than Leslie. When he pastored that church, to show you how he was, Clifton was president of North Carolina Baptist State Convention at one time, before they called him in the 1940s to come to the church in Norfolk.
Mm-hmm.
So when he went there, two things happened. Show you how Clifton was. One day, some people from the Cadillac dealer came to his house and gave him the keys and title to a brand new Cadillac, fully equipped. They left. When they left, he went back to the Cadillac dealer and gave him back the keys.
Mm-hmm.
He gave them back to them, the keys and the title. That's one thing, Clipwood. When he died in the 70s, Griffin, we're talking about now, said they had 30 departments in that church. 30. Now, that's the kind of men, a lot of preachers, many of them bring everything into the recreation.
Mm-hmm.
Or if not, we're going to build a recreational hall across. You see what I mean? They do practice. A lot of preachers try to have all of the needs of people met, all the ages, in one church.
Mm-hmm.
If not in that building, but connected with the church or in his property, out here on the yard. Mm-hmm. See, this is the church, but the building out there on the yard is something, But Clifton had an educational mind on him. His dad and Leslie did too. But he was more in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Griffin was not in. Griffin used to say a lot of times, Jesus stayed in the field. You didn't see him in no church, when the church paid tithes and all, But he would say that a lot of times. He hung around down the film home, Bland Reed.
Mm-hmm.
He stayed down there all the time. But that's what young people would say about it. Overall, people said the same thing that I said, preacher, civil rights leader, and everything will come under those umbrellas. What I just, you ask man over here, oh, he'll sit right there, he good and sit, ask him, oh, he'll stand up for you, so-and-so, he's a good preacher, and so-and-so, but he removed, he believed, as I said, in mobility and moving. Now see, I'll show you one thing like a First Baptist church. I came home one time from Buffalo, sitting down talking with it. So I went upstairs, looking, hey, got new windows, so-and-so. Did you have a problem trying to gather the money or raise the money? No, I don't have I'm trying to get money to do anything. But let me ask for some money to send a child to school. See?
Yeah.
That's why a lot of First Baptists, like his brother did, at First Calvary. Let me ask for some money to put a child through school. Griffin told me that his brother at the church in Norfolk, they kept a child in college. Yeah, that's the kind of mind people had on him.
Yeah.
All he had to do, as you know, make good grades and behave yourself. Now that's putting it plainly, and
Yeah.
that's not like saying making all A's and and be perfect.
Yeah.
But make all A's and behave yourself.
Make good choices.
See,
Yeah.
that covers all bases. Make good grades and behave yourself. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
The A's, B's, and C's could be good grades. But that's all children have to do. Make good grades and behave themselves. And somebody walk.
This is what I'm waiting to read left.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you again for this conversation. I learned a lot, giggled a lot. This was awesome. Thank you.
Huh?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Why would this be so played?